one of the most shocking things that came out of the recently published data on UK arms exports to Israel during the genocide, that the UK did not cancel, refuse, or revoke one arms license with Israel since the 7th of October. So obviously when the British public, we've all seen all over Twitter, all over social media, the most horrific things, is the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life. And you have to almost become numb to deal with it, do you know what I mean? And they haven't revoked one license, not one license. And many of the licenses that they have approved are for components for military aircraft. We don't have the full details, but presumably these are the F-35s that are being used to pummel Gaza. Almost certainly the F-16s, one of which was used in the bombing of a British medical facility, medical aid for Palestinians facility in Gaza. And so another key aspect of this is that 7 days after Israel, I mean, British people in this war, of course, in this genocide are not the most important at all, but just to drive home to the British public the extent to which Britain is prepared to support Israel. Just a week after Israel had killed 3 British charity workers who were working for World Central Kitchen, it was decided by the Foreign Office that Israel was in compliance with international humanitarian law and arms licenses to Israel should therefore continue to be approved. I mean, this is simply incredible. And simultaneously, what you have happening, and this is something that Matt Kennard at Declassified UK has covered extensively, you have British spy planes on a basically daily basis flying over Gaza, supposedly to help with hostage rescue. Israel has killed more British people in Gaza than Britain has helped hostages to be rescued. I mean, what does this say about, one, the purpose of the spy flights themselves? I mean, they're clearly providing, an intelligence function for the Israeli forces. And two, that Britain is, very happy to disregard, the lives of the people it's supposed to represent as a government in favour of supporting Israel in this genocidal war. It's incredible.
I mean, also you have the case of a British citizen with his family appealing to the British Foreign Office to help him escape from Gaza, and being told that if he spied for MI6, then they'd help him. What you also have, interestingly, is the missile which is believed to have killed those individuals who also did work for a private security company. They were former British military personnel who were killed. It's entirely possible, I'm not saying it is the case, but it's entirely possible that was an outsourcing of SAS operations. We can talk about that also. But the missile which killed these people is believed to have been a spike missile produced by the company Rafael, which is an Israeli state-owned arms company. This company has factories in this country. Worse than that, one of the company's subsidiaries in this country, Pearson's Engineering, is headed by John Hutton. Who is John Hutton? He's a former Defense Secretary in the Blair government and a current member of the House of Lords for the Labour Party. So this is quite an incredible level of entanglement that we're talking about here. And Britain does such a good job of cultivating this sort of noble intentioned incompetence about its foreign policy. It's far, far from it. It's intricate, it's sophisticated, and it's deeply embedded with Israeli operations. Even if you look at the case of Zodiac Maritime, which is a British registered company, which has been revealed by the Times to have served as a front for Israeli intelligence in ferrying commandos around the region to carry out assassinations for Israel. Not only is that a British registered company, it's secured by Ambry, which is a company that's essentially an offshoot of the British Ministry of Defense. So Britain is involved intimately in the Gaza genocide, but is still able to produce this impression that it's somehow a neutral arbiter between the sides. Could you talk a bit about this involvement of the British political elite in the Israeli arms trade and also the arms trade which is aiding Israel's war on Gaza.
Yeah, sure. But just to add something about Raphael, following the Israeli airstrike that killed the three and I believe three British and 4 other aid staff, David Cameron tweeted, and he stood up in Parliament, then Foreign Secretary, and said, we're going to ensure that there's an impartial and full and transparent investigation into precisely what happened. Now, what did Israel do? They got the CEO of Raphael, a state-owned arms company, which, as you mentioned, likely provided the exact missile that was used to kill these aid workers, to conduct the investigation into how it occurred. Now, this shows almost a level of contempt by the Israeli government to the UK government, but simultaneously the degrees to which the UK government will allow Israel to do whatever it wants, even kill British citizens, right? And obviously the investigation ended up by largely absolving the officials, and obviously it did not find that they intentionally killed civilians, as they've been doing day in, day out over the past 180 or so days. But to go back to the question, I mean, as you mentioned, John Hutton working for...
Sorry, just to add to that, if Britain did want to do an investigation into it itself, it had the R1 Shadow spy plane in the sky. I don't know for sure at the time of the attack, but on the very day of the attack, within hours of the attack, it was in the sky.
This is another aspect of when the Foreign Office does kind of weekly reviews over whether Israel is complying with international humanitarian law. The information that it receives comes from various different cross-governmental bodies, and one of which is the intelligence community, right? So you've got, RAF spy flights flying over Gaza on a daily basis. They're collecting, I think, around 8 hours of footage every single time. And the Foreign Office is, trying to tell us that they don't have sufficient evidence that Israel is not complying with international humanitarian law. And this is a problem, this is a structural problem in Britain of institutionalised secrecy, right? We're not allowed to request that footage. Given it is being collated and it is owned by intelligence bodies, we can't use freedom of information legislation to request that footage. The Foreign Office isn't required to tell Parliament nor the public about what that footage contains. I mean, they've tried their very best to actually contain any information about these planes flying over Gaza whatsoever. So obviously, I mean, we're talking about various layers of deceit from the British establishment, and particularly from the Foreign Office and the intelligence agencies. They know precisely what is happening. And yet we haven't had one leak. We haven't had one major, instance of somebody coming forward and saying, this is what I have seen in Gaza. The British government knows precisely what is happening in Gaza. Its position on international humanitarian law is untenable.